Welcome everybody, and thanks for tuning in. In this video, we'll walk through replacing the seals in the Dynamo pump provided in the Quick Kit from Pentair. The Quick Kit for the Dynamo comes with 2 drain plug O-rings, the mechanical shaft seal, the housing O-ring, the diffuser O-ring, the pump lid O-ring, and a small tube of silicone lubricant. So let's start by removing the pump lid. Press down and turn the lid counterclockwise to remove it from the pump pot. Here we can see our pump lid O-ring. It sits in a groove in the pump lid. We can use a small pick or flat blade screwdriver to remove this O-ring. Now let's go ahead and remove the strainer basket, and then the drain plug from the pump pot. And again, we can use a small pick or flat blade screwdriver to remove the O-ring from the drain plug. We need to separate the pump pot from the pump housing, and we do this by turning the pot counterclockwise to unscrew it from the housing. Once we get the pot off the housing, we can see the housing O-ring. Let's go ahead and remove this O-ring. While we're here, we can remove the drain plug from the housing and go ahead and remove the O-ring from the drain plug. The housing is attached to the diffuser by these 6 screws with retaining nuts. We use a 5/16 nut driver and a 3/8 wrench to hold the nuts from spinning. While we remove these retaining screws, we recommend you keep them together, and also notice the retaining nut has a flat side and a rounded side. The flat side will go against the back side of the diffuser when we reassemble the pump. With the retaining screws removed, we can separate the housing from the diffuser. And now's a good time to make sure the impeller turns freely. We can go ahead and remove the diffuser O-ring while we're here as well. To remove the impeller, we'll need to access the back of the motor shaft by removing the cover from the back of the motor. We can use a 1/4 inch nut driver to remove the 1 screw holding the cover in place, and then the cover will slide off the back of the motor. Be careful when removing the cover, since there are wires from the motor to the switch that's attached to the cover. And for viewing purposes, we'll go ahead and remove these wires so we can get the cover out of the way, but this is not a necessary step. With the cover removed, we can use a pair of needle nose pliers or a small flat blade screwdriver between the frame of the motor and the fitting to hold the shaft, while we loosen the impeller by turning it counterclockwise. If you have a newer pump with the TEFC motor, instead of removing the cover, you can hold the shaft with a 1/4 inch Allen key through an opening in the back of the motor cover. With the impeller off, we can remove the impeller portion of the mechanical seal by twisting and pulling. You can see here that the rubber seal from the assembly stayed on the impeller shaft. It's important to make sure we remove this before installing the new mechanical seal onto the impeller. To remove the seal from the diffuser, we'll need to separate it from the motor by loosening these 4 bolts at the back of the motor. We'll use a 1/4 inch nut driver to loosen these 4 through bolts and remove the diffuser. Take care when moving the motor around at this point, since with the through bolts removed from the diffuser, the motor ends could separate if the motor is jarred. The through bolts on the TEFC motors are Phillips head style fasteners and are accessible without removing the cover. Now, with the diffuser off, we can use a 5/8 socket to drive the seal out of the diffuser. Now we can start the reassembly in the reverse manner. Before installing the seal into the diffuser, we'll make sure the seal seat is free from dirt and debris that could prevent the seal from seating completely. When handling the new seal, it's important to try and not touch the sealing portion of the seal with your hands, since dirt and oils can cause the seal not to seal properly or fail prematurely. We'll use a solution of soap and water to lubricate the seat to make installation of the seal easier. With a clean 1/2 inch PVC coupling, we can press the seal into the seat. It will usually seat by hand, but we can use a rubber hammer to gently help seat it completely. And if we do contaminate the seal, we can clean it with a lint-free cloth or a clean tissue. Now let's reinstall the diffuser by positioning on the motor with the flat side down and securing it with the 4 through bolts, tightening them evenly in a crisscross manner. The torque specs for these bolts is 28 inch-pounds. And now we need to install the portion of the seal that contains the spring onto the impeller. First, make sure the shaft of the impeller is clean. We can use the soap and water solution on the impeller shaft to help lubricate the seal for easier installation. And then make sure we're putting the seal on with the sealing surface facing the diffuser. And using a twisting motion, we can install it onto the impeller shaft. Again, taking care not to touch the sealing surface. Now we can install the impeller onto the motor shaft by threading it on clockwise. And then we'll need to hold the motor shaft with our needle nose pliers or flat blade screwdriver and tighten the impeller by hand. And now we can install the motor cover and secure it with the retaining screw. Before we assemble the housing, we first need to install the diffuser O-ring. Make sure the groove in the diffuser is clean, and then apply a light coat of the provided silicone lubricant to the diffuser's O-ring and install it onto the diffuser. The silicone lubricant will also help hold the O-ring in place when we assemble the housing. Now let's make sure the sealing surface of the housing is clean, and then position it onto the diffuser with the discharge in the correct position. In our case, the discharge is in the 12 o'clock position. Now we need to install the 6 retaining screws and nuts, making sure we install the nuts with the flat side against the back of the diffuser. Then evenly tighten them by hand in a crisscross manner and torque them to 20 inch-pounds. And now we can install the new housing O-ring. First, we'll make sure the opening to the housing is clean. Then apply an even amount of the silicone lubricant to the new housing O-ring. And then install it into the opening. Let's go ahead and install the new O-ring onto the drain plug, and then screw it into the housing clockwise and finger tighten. Make sure the sealing surface of the pod is clean, and we can thread it into the housing by turning it clockwise. and it'll only go so far, so we may need to back it up a little to achieve the correct position. Now install the new O-ring onto the strainer pot drain plug and screw it into the drain hole clockwise and finger tighten. Next, we can install the strainer basket. Then make sure the groove for the O-ring in the pump lid is clean. Then apply an even amount of the silicone lubricant to the new pump lid O-ring and place it in the groove on the pump lid. And now make sure that the sealing surface of the strainer pot is clean. And then reinstall the lid by aligning the tabs on the pump lid with the notches on the pot, and turn the lid clockwise to secure it to the pot. And now the pump is ready to go back into service.